They yeah, I find I have to have the book.
It's much nicer.
I have to be sitting with a cup of tea.
Like so.
Like so. But if I am scrolling downwards, I'm often at my desk or on a laptop and the screen's really small, and so I don't take it on. Or maybe I just find it a bit irritating because I know it could be in a book form maybe, or...
Yeah. I think maybe I read it on like an iPad, which is a bit more like a book.
Okay.
But still like not the same.
On a screen, can you see the
What's
they
that
called?
called?
Tone, zipper tone.
Zipper tone? Yeah. Yeah.
You can. I mean, you can see it, but does it?
Probably
There's
doesn't have
something-
the same effect.
There's something kind of what's the word? Tactile or
Yeah.
something about it. I mean, at least
I
when
really like the way Tom uses it.
Oh, it's amazing. The thing I was marvelling about as before you came over was that Tom has his Hutch Owen character and that style of drawing which he, and then he's got the more kind of brushier versions of Tom. But he's got like a back catalogue which he can draw upon. This is the Hutch Owen drawings. And then he weaves it all together. And I think someone who's got a large back catalogue can sort of do that. They can sort of reference themselves in a magical way, which those who are just beginning in comics or have only published one or two things haven't yet got the ability to do. And he also makes references to all the other pop culture things within this book as well. There's the Totaro's. Is it what's his name?
My friend Totoro?
My neighbour Totoro, is it my friend?
Yeah. Oh, my neighbour.
And he sort of draws sort of semi in their style as well. And he's a good enough artist to be able to.
Did he talk about? Sorry.
Yeah, it's just he just weaves it all together really nicely.
Yeah.
And it becomes a really rich storytelling kind of thing, which I think is kind of fantastic. And then there's the horror comics style.
Yeah.
And then he actually references the they're making the rain, and he just stares at the image and he looks at the carving that people used to do when they were you get big fat scratching it out.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
So he's making references to the making of comics, and all throughout you can see the zipper tone and how he's actually made this comic, and it's a very tactile comic.
Yeah, definitely.
And to see it on the screen, maybe I just didn't kind of register all that.
You're totally right. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that bit. That's really powerful. I remember him talking about how he wasn't sure about doing that, or like
really?
he hadn't liked. Maybe I'm misremembering, but he said something that he didn't like other comics that did that, or that talked about other. That brought in other.
You didn't like comics referencing them? No.
Either referencing other comics or other art forms, or like bringing in, or like something about it being too messy or unnecessary or something like that. Like it should just be a self-contained thing. But this makes it so much like him referencing his own work and other work. Like it makes it all very personal. And the way art helps in like healing and like understanding what's happening when something happens that you cannot understand.
I haven't read all the way through it again, but it looks like, well, maybe it's happened some time again. I mean, there's Mouse and all the trauma-related comics where people are using the drawing process to discover what it is they're actually feeling. I mean, maybe that's well documented, perhaps. But maybe that's also what's so great about seeing Sarah Firth's drawing of her being the neurotic, is that something about it being drawn, or more distilled in a drawing.
Feels pretty raw in a drawing.
Something about it being more abstract makes it more true, or I don't know. I'm not sure.
More like you're able to feel it more viscerally. Yeah, I think.
And the way Tom draws himself, it's brutal. Like it's just especially the earlier stuff. Like,
And Leela, like both of them.
yeah, I mean, there's smiling there, but it's the more innocent moments. But the bags in the art, oh yeah, rubbing that bottle against his face, that's really tactile stuff. How to tend to a blasted heart. Oh, that references Leela's saying that her heart feels like a blast site. Yeah.
It's all very natural, the change in like drawing style from, you know, from that sort of scratchy style to this imitative.
Is that because you accept it? But they do that a lot in. Actually, when I was hanging out with Tom and Leela, I was talking about to them about what's the Japanese master's name? He made Astro Boy. I always forget his name for some stupid reason. But he had a vast array of backstories, and he put all of his cast of characters, which were all often drawn in different styles, within same stories.
That's cool.
It's freaking weird to look at when you're not used to reading.
What's his name? Anyway.
Him.
Yeah.
The big one. I wanted to ask you something, actually. Having read this in, well, several forms now, some of them on the screen, and now they've been worked into a large book called Raw Feels, and then seeing it at the Comic Art Workshop in... Was it more or less the same? Was there a couple of extra bits? Or?
There was one bit that I changed, I think. And a few little things I fixed up, but I don't think I changed much at all.
Often when you read things, you can feel influences, especially visual things. You can see the influence or feel it. Like I look at Mandy and I can see Julie Doucet clearly. I can see writing influences and philosophical influences, but I'm not sure what, if any, visual influences I can see in yours. It feels like your visual language has sprung out of the egg fully formed. I know it didn't, because I know I've seen your earlier work and I can see the progression of your own language, but I cannot see for the life of me where your drawing style.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yes, I would like you to tell me.
That's a secret.
Oh, you bastard.
No, it was pretty like John Porcellino. I was pretty every now and then, John Porcellino probably, and this other guy Simon Morrison. Just both of those. Just noticed a bit that I didn't do a very good job cleaning up of in Photoshop. But both of them use a lot of white space. And I think I'd always wanted to be doing that, but I didn't have confidence. And then seeing somebody else use a lot of white space made me, I think, And just also sort of, giving up and not wanting to ruin it. And just going, I don't know what else to add to a drawing, so just leaving it.
Is that why the drawing of Mount Wellington is one of your favourites? Because in that particular instance, when you told me that you were on the motorboat and it went out of view, or the view changed and you couldn't add any more, and then you were forced to leave it, was that a particularly revelatory moment for you? As in, like, I cannot do any more, and then leave it, and then realised it was, I don't know, perfect as it was, or something like that? Or?
Yes, I was like, this is perfect as it is.
Yeah.
No, well I did, maybe, I think that was, because it felt good because I didn't have to make a choice about that. Like the choice was made for me to like end it, and then I just sort of had to be happy with it as it was, and that was kind of like, a nice way to feel about your own work. To not be like, oh, I should have done this and more, or like, oh, that's not quite right. To just be like, a moment in time, and then the next moment happened. Yeah.
That's an awesome moment. At least it sounds like an awesome moment.
Thanks, it was it, yeah. Yeah. And then this old guy, like, asked me, like, showed me his sketchbook and all his, like, drawings.
Yeah.
It was really nice. I feel like that's the thing that happens to me more in Tasmania than it does anywhere else.
Really?
Yeah, that people, like, talk about their own art, or, like, have a more, like, genuine sort of interest in your art as well. Do you know that?
Maybe. I don't know. When you come to Tasmania, I guess, are you in tourist mode?
Yeah, I guess that. Yeah, maybe.
I guess I live here, maybe, and maybe that. It probably doesn't feel like that's been my experience, but I do find that since I moved here, it's felt like certain types of artistic communities have, maybe just within that time span, or maybe I've just become aware of it, have slowly coagulated or banded together to support each other in the face of no other sort of external support.
Yeah.
Particularly writer communities. I mean, my little festival was sort of an effort to band together illustrators and comic makers and animators, and that feels like it's become a bit more of a tight-knit community. And I've sort of seen, but I think I do think that people, actually sometimes I'm sitting there sketching in like Frankie's cafe or something. People come up and talk to me about drawing, and life drawings become a real thing, and everyone's sort of starting to know each other a bit more.
Yeah, cool.
And there's a lot more support, but maybe I always think the comic community is, in the whole of Australia, is really supportive of each other, but I think it's because no one can make any money off it, so everyone's kind of like just doing it because they love it and are really fans of each other.
Yeah.
Maybe commercial art is a bit more competitive or something, and a little bit more precious, or at least that's what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah.
I love making comics because you get to have adventures and meet people, and everyone's really friendly. And I think I just fell upon it, and it feels like the funnest bunch of people to be hanging out with, really.
That's such a great attitude. That's excellent.
Well, I think it's the attitude of everyone. Everyone's really nice.
Yeah, it's true.
Doesn't always sound like it's as nice in the Comic-Con sort of world or superhero world, but maybe that's because there's a bit more money in it, or I'm not sure. It's got a longer standing tradition.
Yeah.
Whereas all the indie people are just
awesome.
just trying to make good fun comics and
Yeah. To go back to what you were saying before about serif effects, or like the putting something in a drawing, making it more easy to understand. Was that what you were saying, or like more?
That's wasn't what I was saying, but I think that's what I believe.
Yeah.
I think somehow.
Yeah.
Well, the distilling of it. It is easy to understand.
Yeah,
or
because that's
it cuts
kind
to
of
the heart of it.
that's what, like, the long weekend in Alice Springs.
Yeah.
That's what you did with, like, you were.
Oh, drawing it to make it easy to understand. Yeah, that figuring out process.
The essay.
Yeah.
That Craig Sandrock wrote to make it easier to understand.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Can you talk about that process?
Sure. I read his essay once and probably didn't have a clue what he was on about, because he was talking about psychological concepts, I guess. But I didn't understand then. He was talking about the cultural complex, and I was like, yeah, that's something I haven't quite wrapped my head around yet. But he wrote about it in a narrative style, and he kept describing all these scenes which I knew really well and had seen, and I think my brain latched onto the scenes that he was using to explore the idea, and I felt like he was describing all my experiences, because that's sort of Alice Springs' experience. I worked in the psych ward where he explained that story. So I knew all those things. And I felt maybe he was saying something important, but I didn't understand it. And I think I was drawing the scenes because I was also trying to understand what I had witnessed in those scenes. And then I sort of slowly started to understand the psychological concepts that he was exploring just by drawing bits of them. But I was using it. Like I drew the scene in the hospital with the girl because I'd seen several girls who in my mind's eye at least, I was reading it as those people that I knew, even though Craig was probably exploring or talking about another girl from probably years previous when he worked more closely with that same place. But I'd seen that same person over and over again, you know, in different iterations. So I really identified with that sort of cyclical nature of, which I think a lot of people see in the desert lifestyle and repetitive government interventions or white people coming in trying to save the world and leaving broken, and indigenous people kind of having things done to them over and over. You know that. And drawing it, you know, when you, I don't know, mark making or kind of, it forces you to do it really slowly. And when you draw a person, you're really exploring every aspect of their face. And if you draw an expression, you kind of almost enact that expression as you're drawing it. If you're drawing a frown, you kind of like actually.
Yeah, totally.
So you kind of
you
acting.
Them. Yeah, that's what I like that.
And by doing that, you as an actor, like you kind of inhabit the person and you kind of try to get to understand them. And you do everything that happens in your comic as you're drawing, and you do it so slowly that you really absorb stuff from the writing, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's sort of like a slowly weaving. I used to think of it like that, I guess.
Yeah.
You're weaving that story together, particularly with long form comics, because you've got lots of disparate threads that you have to kind of bring together. So you're literally, well, not literally, figuratively, weaving the story together. And then even the bits, like I didn't understand it probably even till some of the things, probably till after I finished the book and then I was reading over it and I understood it differently as a comic, and I could see things which were there, part of that initial story that Craig wrote. And after I'd weaved my version of it, I then looked back at the comic and went, oh, now I can see what Craig was getting at with a couple of other bits which I hadn't kind of, only after I'd weaved myself into it, which was kind of weird. Anyway, that's a funny, probably, quirk of taking someone else's work and then making your version of it. But the drawing was this strange, laborious thing which takes for years. And
the drawing's amazing in this. It's so beautiful. Like the different visual languages that, like the maps and the way you draw people, the way you draw locations, and yeah, all the visual references that you sort of make through.
Thanks.
Yeah. Things. It just seems perfectly adapted. Maybe because it was personal to you, because you were like trying to understand this. Yeah.
I think that's what kept me going.
Definitely.
Like 5 or something years or something. I mean, not all the drawing was that long. But trying to figure shit out kept me going and kept me interested, because every page had a different idea. And I had to figure out what the idea was and then how to say it.
That's just good life advice in general. Trying to figure it out, keep me going.
Yeah. You know, if you're going to do a long art project, if you're going to have a long life,
trying to figure it out keeps you going.
That's probably similar in all of your comics, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Raw Fields is quite. It seems obvious from the outside that there are lots of disparate pieces which are weaved together into one thing, but it seems like one. That is not a lifelong investigation into yourself, but it reads really well as one piece because it is one piece.
Okay, good.
Is it? I don't know if I'm wording that very well, but like it feels like that's what you're.
I guess it is.
Things change, of course. If you're working out, like raw feels like there's a nice progression towards the end, and it feels like there's a resolution. I mean, and that can happen, of course, in life, but sometimes when you're manufacturing a book and you want to make it have a storyline, you do have to sort of make that a little bit artificial at times.
Yeah.
But and maybe that's the case in raw feels, but I don't know. You can go through those kind of story arcs in life as well, where you're grappling with depression or exploring physical sensations, and they're all sort of part and parcel of working stuff out, and you do work stuff out, and maybe you move on to another phase of life, perhaps. Or
Yeah. I think the thing that kept me going was not necessarily the stuff that was like me figuring out stuff about myself or my life, because that stuff would drive me crazy. I'd be like, I can't think about myself, I'm awful, why have I decided to do this? Like, there's nothing, or like, I just don't want to go over that thing that happened in my life again. Even if it's not something that's even that significant, but just sort of is an example of something else that happens in a life. It would be more the other, like, I guess the more like philosophical things that kept me going, like figuring out mind-body problem. And the differences between like writing and drawing, or the similarities really.
that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean like the physical act of writing and drawing. Oh no, and
Your drawing is probably more like writing than any other comics I've ever seen. More observably, or like you can see that Leonie as character, what do you call it? Just Leonie?
Yeah, I guess so.
Is a word.
Yeah.
Or something. Like, as much as comics can be really obviously writing, like I read your pictures more than I think any other. Maybe because it's so distilled or minimal, like it feels like probably the heart of what a cartoon is, like really drawn down to its barest elements, and the thickness of the line is so much like the writing that for me it feels like writing, and probably because you can sometimes so little happens from panel to panel that it feels so fluidly like reading script, except reading emotions more than.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks.
I don't know why I started saying that.
No, that is kind of like what I wanted, I think, or like how I felt drawing.
How many lines are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with a dot. That's what currently didn't Luce say that it used to be like 17 lines and it's been distilled down to 10 over the last 3 or 4 years?
I guess just it's been distilled down. many.
Can't go any further, can it? No, sometimes you have just a face, don't you? Oh, there's one. Oh, yeah.